What is up, guys? Welcome back to my channel. Today we're gonna be getting into my 3.0 first and second round mock draft. Yes, we are 2 days away from the mock draft, so we will be getting into a 2-round mock draft this time. So let's get into it, and I just want to check. Yeah, so the Packers trade has been put through in this, so we don't have to worry about that. But let's dive into this mock draft. I'm going to be doing my first round here today. And then the second round down here, I will be releasing tomorrow as we're 2 days away from the draft. So let's get into it. Start out with the first pick here. And it was kind of going back and forth for a bit there, like a month or like a few weeks ago or so. But I feel like it's pretty obvious right now. And this is a what I would do mock draft as well. So I would obviously go with Bryce Young. I've been doing it since the beginning here. I think he's the better QB prospect. CJ Stroud, I think, is a lower ceiling player than Bryce Young is. Bryce Young, just about the same floor, I would say. So it's just, he's a little bit smaller, but could be some durability concerns. But I still think that Bryce Young is the player there. Other than his height and stature, he's definitely the best QB in this class. And that's really the only thing holding him back. He has really all the other talents. But that is Young at number one. And then we got the Texans, and CJ Stroud's been slipping as of late. A lot of people saying that Will Anderson Jr. might go first. And honestly, I think that's going to happen. Well, I think I would do it. If I'm the Texans, I would wait till next year, build up this defense. We know this team needs a lot of roster building. It's not suit yet for holding a QB in there. They've got to get, especially a young quarterback, they've got to get this defense figured out. So just have another bad year, tank a bit, and then maybe you could get Caleb Williams next season. And yeah, I like that pick a lot for the Texans. I think it's a good pick. Don't give in to CJ Stroud because you never know if he is going to be the guy. I think he's a lower ceiling type player and is just he could be a top 10 QB, but I don't really see him being like an elite top 5 QB in the NFL. So that is where I see them for the Texans picking Will Anderson Jr. And then we got the Cardinals, and the Cardinals really wanted Will Anderson, I think, but they're going to miss out on him. So Arizona, I think, is gonna have to trade down here. You could take Tyree Wilson. Jalen Carter, I don't think is the right destination for them. Tyree Wilson, I don't think you take him at 3. So we're gonna actually trade down here with Arizona. And the trade is going to be, oops, my bad. Takes a while to load on this thing. Okay. So the trade is going to be obviously the 6th for the 3rd, and then we're going to have – you're not going to have to give up the 18th pick, I think, if you're the Lions, but you're going to have to give up the 48th pick and I think a second rounder or a second or a first. I think a conditional second would probably be the best option here for both these teams. You could probably throw in a bunch of 5th-round picks or something, but I think that's a fine trade. Second, first, whatever one you want to do. But the Lions at 3, I think that this is where they traded up to take Anthony Richardson with this pick. I feel like Anthony Richardson, perfect situation, developed behind Jared Goff for a bit. This Lions team is fully set besides the QB. Jared Goff had an excellent year, but I think the Lions know that they want to take that step. You traded away Matthew Stafford to get your franchise QB, and Anthony Richardson is that. And it's a perfect situation. I don't really like Anthony Richardson getting thrown into the fire and starting for a team, but to be a backup for a year or two would be probably the most beneficial circumstance for him, especially behind a good, solid QB like Jared Goff. Moving on to the Colts. And the Colts, I think, are going to take C.J. Stroud with him still on the board. I feel like that's pretty obvious. And Indy probably going to have to start their QB right away. So C.J. Stroud's going to be that. You feeling more confident about him starting right away than you do about Anthony Richardson or Will Levis. So that's a perfect fit for Indianapolis. Draft CJ Stroud. And then Seattle. And I'm going to go Jalen Carter for the Seahawks here. Seattle, I think, is a good destination for him, even with the off-the-field concerns. Pete Carroll and the Seahawks team has been known to draft players like that in the past and making it work out. So, yeah, I feel like that is the good pick for the Seahawks right there at number 5. That they need some interior defensive line help anyway. They signed Draymond Jones, but that's not going to be enough. They need a big-time bruiser player. Jalen Carter could has had some flashes of Aaron Donald, people say. But anyway, that's where I'm going to go with Carter. It's a risky pick, but I think it is worth it for the Seahawks. And then number 6 for Arizona. And you traded down here. And I said Tyree Wilson. I'm actually not going to take Tyree Wilson with this pick. I'm going to take Devin Witherspoon. I think that Witherspoon is just the better overall player than Tyree Wilson. And obviously, you probably aren't going to take him at 5. You're comfortable trading down to 6 to take him. But yeah, Devin Witherspoon, I think he's the best cornerback in this class by a long shot, even better than Christian Gonzalez. And, Cardinals so desperately need cornerback. They need a lot of positions. Why not start at one of the most important ones and get a corner with that pick? And then we're going to have another trade here. You look at the Raiders. This is where I think that they could take Will Levis, Jimmy Garoppolo, develop behind Jimmy Garoppolo. But like I said, I don't think that's going to happen. You could take Tyree Wilson, but Christian Gonzalez maybe, but I don't think you need to take one of those here. You can wait a bit, and a team desperate to move up, I think, is the Titans. What's the Titans? They always have good seasons, so I don't think that they're going to consistently pick high to take a QB. That's why I think that Tennessee is one of those teams that's going to want to trade up here. And I think that it's going to be the first-round pick, and then this one, and the second-round pick in this draft, and then I would say a 2023 probably a conditional third. Maybe if Will Levis, if the Titans draft Will Levis and he starts, that becomes a third. If he doesn't, that becomes a second. So, or whatever that would be. But let's see if this goes through. It did. So, yeah, the Titans move up. They are going to take Will Levis to develop behind, what's his face, Ryan Tannehill. And yeah, just like Anthony Richardson, Will Levis. I'm more comfortable with Will Levis starting right away, but not as comfortable as like C.J. Stroud or Bryce Young. And if you can get Ryan Tannehill to help out Will Levis, who really just had a rough scene around him at Kentucky, no one to help him out. So I like that pick for the Titans. Get Will Levis and move on to the Falcons, who at number 8, I think you got to take Tyree Wilson. He's still on the board. The Falcons need some edge help, and with Tyree Wilson on the board, man, that one's a pretty obvious one for them. Tyree Wilson, excellent player, and then excellent edge, freak of nature. It's going to be a perfect fit. And then we got the Bears on the clock, and then Paris Johnson Jr. The Bears need offensive tackle, and Paris Johnson Jr. fits their scheme and their system. It's just a perfect fit. If he's there on the board, I would be shocked if the Bears don't take him. So that's where I'm going at 9. Number 10, the Eagles are on the clock, and this is an interesting pick here. The Eagles, they could go a lot of ways here. I could see them maybe getting a developmental offensive tackle in the building to maybe, because they always like to draft those guys, never want to see what it's like to have a bad offensive line in the future. That could be a pick. They could go corner here. They need a corner. But honestly, guys, I'm going to go with Bijan Robinson. I think this is probably where the highest pick Bijan could go as at 10. But the Eagles trying to win right now. Bijan Robinson, a running back with Jalen Hurts. My, oh my, that offense would be scary with him. And this team just came off a Super Bowl. So like I said, this team's going to want to win right now. And Bijan Robinson in the NFC as well. I mean, they got to shoot their shot at this point with the NFC being as it is and take it Bijan Robinson. That would be a really good pick. You could try and trade down, but I don't think anyone wants to trade up with you, so I'm going to take Bijan. Then we got the Raiders here at number 11, and this is where, a player that you might have thought about picking at number 7 is still on the board. Take Christian Gonzalez, a cornerback. Raiders need corner help bad, and I think that Gonzalez is a perfect fit for that team. And then moving on to the Texans. For the Texans, you take an edge player earlier. I'm going to take Peter Skronsky for Houston out of Northwestern. You're trying to build up this roster for next year to get a good roster around the QB position. And this is like the best player available, I think, right now is Peter Skronsky, or one of the best player available. So I feel like that's a good pick for the Texans. Like I said, develop that team for your future QB, and you'll be just fine. So moving on here to number 13, we're going to have the Packers on the clock. And the Green Bay Packers, a tough pick. I think that they could either go with Jackson Smith and the Jigba. Maybe, I feel like just two players, Jackson Smith and the Jigba or Dalton Kincaid here. And I'm going to go with Dalton Kincaid, tight end out of Utah. The Packers have no tight ends right now. They need tight end help. And Dalton Kincaid is a really good tight end prospect right there, and he'll be a good fit in Green Bay. And then moving on to the Patriots, I'm going to pick Deonte Banks from Maryland. Perfect fit. Deonte Banks, I'm a big Deonte Banks fan here. He is a really good prospect out of Maryland. You look at him, his zone coverage is really good. Man-to-man coverage also really good. He's just a very well-rounded player, a really freak of nature here. And with Bill Belichick, he's going to love a player like this. So at 14, that's a really good pick for New England, I think. And then moving on to 15, the Jets. And there's two players I think I would take here. We all know the Jets need some offensive tackle help here. It's either between Broderick Jones and Darnell Wright, I think, with this pick. Broderick Jones, I feel like the difference between these two is Broderick Jones isn't as ready to start right now, but is in the future probably will be the better player overall than Darnell Wright. But Darnell Wright, I think, is more ready to start right now. So a little bit of a higher floor, and I think that's what the Jets are trying to do. They're trying to win right now. They just traded for Aaron Rodgers. Get Darnell Wright, the player that I think is more experienced right now. And this offensive line was so bad last year that they need to get some help there, and I think that that's what they get in Darnell Wright. Moving on to the Commanders, I always struggle with the Washington Commanders pick here at 16. They could go a lot of different directions here. I could see them going with, a edge player maybe if they trade away. What's his face? Slipping my mind, the Ohio State kid that they drafted a couple years ago in the first round. One of the best prospects ever. But anyway, I could see him drafting maybe reaching on a tight end. I probably want to trade down here, but I don't think anyone is going to want to move up at 16. So I'm going to take Joey Porter Jr. They need a cornerback, I think. And like I said this in the last mock draft, after Joey Porter, these four cornerbacks that I've already picked, after him, there's a big drop-off in talent, I think, at the cornerback position. So secure a Joey Porter Jr. right there at 16, to help your cornerback room that needs help desperately. So that's where the Commanders go. And then at 17, we have the Pittsburgh Steelers. And the Steelers, they obviously wanted Joey Porter Jr. That's the perfect fit, in-state player for Pittsburgh. They need cornerback, but he just goes off the board, so they're not going to be able to get him. So the best player on PFN's board is still there. The Steelers, they're going to need to develop some tackles here. Their offensive line needs to get better. So take Broderick Jones. That's a great pick at 17. Great value right there. I could see him go with Brian Brzee here, but I don't think they do. I think that Broderick Jones is the right fit, and he's going to go to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And then number 18, the Detroit Lions went with Anthony Richardson early. Were able to retain this pick. And I feel like Detroit is going to want to take Brian Brzee. Either Brian Brzee or Kalijah Kancey. Either one. I was debating between this one, but I'm going to go with Brian Brzee here. I feel like he's just slightly the better prospect in my eyes. I feel like he had a tough last year, but he had some excuses. His sister died, and that Clemson defense just wasn't, it just was weird last season. So Brian Brzee, I think, is a great prospect here out of Clemson. And, if he can develop in Detroit, the Lions obviously take it to QB. They need to build up this defense now. And I think that Brian Brzee is a right pick for them. And then moving on to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers here at 19. And the Buccaneers, always a tough team to pick for, man. I mean, they need tackle, but Broderick Jones goes off the board. They could use an edge. They could just really go with the best player available here. But I'm honestly going to trade down with Tampa Bay as well here. I just think that this is a team that has so many needs that they're going to need to move down here in this draft, accumulate some picks here, I think. There's a team that I think wants to hop. And it might surprise some people, but it's going to be the Baltimore Ravens. I feel like this Lamar Jackson situation isn't going to be figured out by the draft. So I feel like the Ravens, they're going to have to go all in for Lamar. They know how important he is. They're going to want to show him that we're in it for you, Lamar. We are going to move up here to take one of the best receiver prospects. And this is going to be the 22nd pick and the 19th pick, as well as a 2024 second-round pick. I know that's a lot to move up to 19, just 3 picks, but I feel like it's necessary for the Lamar Jackson situation. So that one should be an accept. Yes. Then we got Baltimore here. And this is where Baltimore is going to take Quentin Johnston. A lot of people think of Jackson Smith-Njigba. I think Quentin Johnston's the better fit here for Baltimore. And I think that Jackson Smith-Njigba, really good player. But I think that Quentin Johnston's honestly the better prospect here. Just slightly. So Jackson Smith-Njigba might be a little bit surprised to some of you, but he continues to fall here to 20. And the Ravens select Quentin Johnston, trying to go all in for Lamar. Jump Seattle, jump LA. I think that makes sense for the Ravens to get a really good receiver. And then number 20 here for the Seahawks. We're going to have this. This is a really interesting pick for Seattle. There's like 3 players I'm looking at here. Lucas Van Ness slides all the way down the board here to 20. Really crazy slide right there. Usually I have him going in like the top 15. But he's sliding in this one. We had Jackson Smith-Njigba. Could be the next Tyler Lockett. Really good. Seattle needs a slot receiver bad. So they could go that route. But honestly, I don't think they do that. I think that they go with Nolan Smith. Nolan Smith, edge out of Georgia. Lucas Van Ness is the better prospect, I think. But with them taking Jalen Carter here with that first pick, I feel like getting Nolan Smith is the right option for Seattle because Nolan Smith played with Jalen Carter. He's a professional from what I've heard, and he can go in there, continue to keep Carter in check like he did in Georgia, and Seattle just going all in on Jalen Carter, draft Nolan Smith. They need edge. They need a blue chip edge player anyways, and that's a really good pick, I think, for the Seahawks. And then moving on to the LA Chargers here. And with Jackson Smith-Njigba on the board, I'm going to take him. I think the Chargers need more of a deep threat receiver, but Jackson Smith-Njigba on the board, man, I mean, that's just too good talent to pass up, and I think that's where the Chargers go at number 21. Pretty self-explanatory pick there. And then we got the Buccaneers. And the Buccaneers, like I said, they could take best player available here. And with Lucas Van Ness still on the board, I mean, he's just too good to pass up, I think, for Tampa Bay. That edge room's getting older. You're going to need to get that player in there. Lucas Van Ness didn't play a lot of snaps at Iowa, but with him, maybe developing for a bit behind their edge unit, I think that that's a good pick. And I mean, like I said, that's just too good value at 22 to pass up, I think. Moving on to number 23, Minnesota. Minnesota's a tough pick here because I think that their most important need right now is cornerback by far. And do they take a corner, though? Like, I don't know. I don't think, I mean, like, I think they want to trade down here with this pick, but they're not going to get to. I don't think anyone's going to want to jump here. I was looking at maybe the Saints, but to maybe take Myles Murphy. But honestly, I think that the Saints just don't have enough resources to move up. So we're going to actually stay put here. We always see one of these reach picks in the first round of every mock draft. And mine's going to be Tyreek Stevenson, cornerback out of Miami. A little bit probably of a crazy pick for some people, but Tyreek Stevenson, I think, is underrated from Miami. He fits in perfectly in that Vikings scheme, and this team needs a cornerback so desperately. I think that they want to trade down, accumulate some picks, and then take him. But, I mean, Tyreek Stevenson, you got to take him and hope that Andrew Booth Jr. could get healthy this season. And then, because that defense was just atrocious last year, especially on the back end. Changing the schemes with Brian Flores, Tyreek Stevenson fits it perfectly, and that's where I'm going to go. And then moving on to the Jacksonville Jaguars here, and I'm going to take Brian Branch. Pretty self-explanatory pick here. The Jaguars need a safety with Brian Branch still on the board. I mean, that's just too good. That's just too easy for that pick. I think that one's a pretty obvious one. I mean, I could see him maybe taking Michael Mayer, getting it tight end, but I don't think so. Moving on to the New York Giants. And the Giants, I've been going with Michael Mayer the past couple of mock drafts. A lot of Giants fans probably saying that's crazy. It is a little bit out there, but I think my reasoning, if you want to see my reasoning on that, check out my other video from a couple weeks ago that I explained that. It's not that crazy, but I can see why Giants fans don't like it. So I'm going to take John Michael Schmitz here with this pick. He's really down the board here. The Giants need a center here. They need interior offensive line bad. And John Michael Schmitz, really good center out of Minnesota. He is a bulldozer center prospect. And I think that the Giants, I like what they did at receiver. I don't think that's the pick here. And I think that John Michael Schmitz still on the board. You got to take him, I think, if you're New York. Then we got the Dallas Cowboys up. Pretty obvious one, I think, for me. Mazi Smith. Still on the board. How far down is he on PFN? There he is. With Mazi Smith on the board, I mean, I love that pick for the Dallas Cowboys. And, that just fill in a need there. Mazi Smith, an interior defensive line, interior defensive tackle. He is a really good player out of Michigan, and he'll fit in right in with Dallas. So that one's a pretty easy one. And then we're going to stop right there because we're going to go to round 2. So we'll stop that line down there. But anyway, moving on to the Buffalo Bills. We're going to go with DeJuan Jones, offensive tackle out of Ohio State. But kind of slipping as of late, but DeJuan Jones, Buffalo needs an offensive tackle, and I think he's the best offensive tackle on the board. Offensive tackle kind of gets worse as you go down the draft, especially after what's his face? The Syracuse Matthew Bergeron. After that, it's just really bad tackle. I mean, not bad, but like tackle prospects that you're just not comfortable with starting right away. And DeJuan Jones, Bills need an offensive tackle. Get him in the building there. That's a pretty easy pick. Moving on to the Cincinnati Bengals. And I'm going to go with O'Cyrus Torrence for Cincy. They need an offensive guard here in the house, and I think that with O'Cyrus Torrence there, that one's a pretty easy pick for the Cincinnati Bengals. I mean, I could see him going with Antoine Harrison, but I think that they need more of an offensive guard here, and O'Cyrus Torrence, the best guard in this class, take him. So we've been going with 3 offensive linemen in this. Moving on to the Saints here, and Myles Murphy, you see him sitting right there. And I think that if you're the Saints, you got to take him at that point. I like the situation. Myles Murphy could be like a situational linebacker, come in a little bit. or edge player come in on a few snaps, a rotational guy in for this first year in New Orleans, because you're going to need that guy to develop behind Jordan, and because they're not getting any younger there. So with the Saints, they're at 29. I think that with Myles Murphy slipping, that's a pretty good pick, I think, for them. Moving on to number 30, and I'm going to go with Elijah Cansey. And he slipped all the way down here. I mean, I could see him going with a corner here, but I don't think that there's a good enough prospect at that point. And then Elijah Cansey at 30. I mean, he slips quite a bit. That's pretty far slip for me, at least. It's just how the board worked out. The Eagles gonna need that interior defensive line isn't getting any younger, and Elijah Cansey, more of a boomer bust type prospect there out of Pittsburgh. But if he can boom, man, he's gonna be a scary pass rusher in the NFL. So Elijah Cansey is gonna go to 30. Then we're gonna round out the first round at 31 with the Kansas City Chiefs, and they're gonna take Antoine Harrison, offensive tackle, Oklahoma, to finish off the first round. Like I said, there's a drop-off on offensive tackle help once you get into the second round. So take Antoine Harrison and just call it a day, because we all know that the Chiefs need that offensive line help or tackle help, and that's where I'm going to go with it. So that is the first round. Let's just take a scroll up. First overall is Bryce Young. Just if you want, I'm going to scroll down a bit here. You want to check it out for maybe a review or something. And then round 2 we will do tomorrow. Pittsburgh is on the clock tomorrow. Anyway, guys, thank you for watching this video today. Hopefully y'all enjoyed the content. Comment down below your thoughts on this mock draft. And anyway, peace out.